What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DEVpro duel video, and again we're going to be playing with the gadget deck because there is yet one other prevalent matchup that I haven't tried this deck against, and that is Burning Abyss variants. Now the deck itself has stayed completely the same from the last video that I filmed and put up, which was the Cosmo games, simply because I don't feel like there's anything that really is glaring at me that needs to be changed at this point in time. Specifically, everything seems to be working as well as I kind of want it to, and honestly there's nothing else that I would really consider changing that would actually be really beneficial in the BA matchup or against Burning Abyss Phantom Knights or whatever variant of BA you play against. Dweller is obviously going to be really important, but I don't see a need to bump it to 2, specifically because there are double Daigastu Emerald in the extra deck, so you essentially in theory have infinite resources of virtually anything because of this. Now Tin Plate Goldfish being a water is actually going to be really relevant here, specifically because it also boosts Dweller's attack, thus making it bigger and harder for the BA deck to get over without investing some sort of resource into it and using some of its floaters away, basically. But other than that, that's basically just it. This deck is very much very standard in what I would consider something that that can just work, because it's literally just rank 4 spam with gadgets and such, and then just good defensive cards. So I wonder if these defensive cards will actually be utilizable against Burning Abyss in any form of actual good capacity, because Strike isn't the best against BA or BA variants, and Bottomless can only hit a few things. Stormy Mirror Force is probably only the really good card here. That's the actual issue, is that there's a lot of defensive cards, but none of them have a really high value ceiling against Burning Abyss, unless you have something like, say, a Dweller active, or if you're just oppressing them with raw card advantage, basically. But anyway, that's enough for the deck overview. Let's jump into the first game. Alright, so first game, first of 2. There's only 2 games in this video because one, when I was filming, I was in a slight bit of a hurry and I didn't want to have to risk being late for what I was going to be doing afterwards by trying to fit in a 3rd or 4th game. And then also the first game that we played, this one, was actually quite complex. It got some complexity in its game states as it went, and it basically just drug the game out to about 16-17 minutes for the raw file itself. But anyway, he goes first, and he sets a monster and sets 2 and passes. He doesn't really have an optimal starting hand or board, but my hand is actually really strong with Twin Twister discarding Gold Gadget to destroy his 2 back row, because I have the Call of the Haunted to float the Gold Gadget back, so I'm not worried about getting rid of it, and I'd rather not lose the Gold Gadget to one of the plethora of traps that he could be running. So I set my Storming Mirror Force, my Call of the Haunted, and my Solemn Warning, and I summon my Green Gadget and I search Red Gadget and pass my turn. I don't attack the monster because I assume it to be either a Graph or a Scarm or something like that, something that I would take unnecessary damage from anyway, and there's no benefit for me to just put it face up immediately. But he normal summons a Phantom Knight Gloves, flips his cloak over so it wasn't anything that I thought it was, and then exceeds into Ghost Trick Alucard. And at this point I contemplate whether or not I want to let it go, because if he targets my Call of the Haunted I can just flip it. But I just decide, you know what, it's probably just in my best interest to warning this, because I don't want to lose the Snare Force, because the Storming Mirror Force is probably the only valuable card in this matchup that I can potentially use, because it allows me to spin things like Beatrice and Dante and Break Sword, and thus prevent them from triggering. And I've got the Call of the Haunted set, which could have dodged Alucard 100%, but I actually want to be able to activate that Call of the Haunted on my own terms, i.e. potentially in the end phase, to get a special summon off the Gold Gadget, or in response to Break Sword popping a back row. That would honestly be the favorable interaction, because then you can just float into Silver Gadget, special red out of hand, and then at that point, it's pretty good in terms of a resource investment. But he uses Fog Blade from his grave that I Twin Twisted and brings back his Ragged Gloves, and then he special summons the Silent Boots that he searches off of the Cloak. And then he overlays into a Levier the Sea Dragon so that he starts getting his resource pool back into circulation, because it's actually just really easy for him to just continually keep up Phantom Knight resources until he needs to, feel the need to make a Dante or something like that. So he makes Levier, brings back his Cloak in defense mode. Then he banishes the Silent Boots that he detached off the Levier to search a Fog Blade. So he searched Fiendish Chain, essentially, so I've got to keep that in mind for how I'm going to be playing this game. And I decide that I just am going to take the... I contemplate whether or not I want to actually flip the Storming Mirror Force here. And then I end up just letting the Green Gadget die, because I don't really care about it that much. He sets Fog Blade, so in the end phase I Call the Haunted for the Gold Gadget, special the Red Gadget, get a search, so that way the Gold Gadget can't get potentially, Fog Bladed. So at this point, I draw a Tin Plate Goldfish for my turn, and I'm like, alright, so I can make another rank 4, that's really cool. That's really going to be very economical for me. And so at this point, I actually make a little bit of the incorrect play. I decide to make a Castel here, and then I use Castel's effect to try and spin away his Levier, expecting this to bait the Fog Blade, when I could have probably actually just baited the Fog Blade itself off of making something like Gear Gigant. Honestly, I probably could have just baited the card then, but it didn't actually bait the Fog Blade, so unfortunately my my little stratagem actually failed. So I'm pretty sure the Fog Blade itself would have baited the Gear Gigant, would have been baited on the Gear Gigant maybe if I'd made Gear Gigant, because one, the Gear Gigant is a huge body, can attack over the Leviair, stuff like that. But he ends up Fog Blading my Tinplate Goldfish, because at this point I'm like, I have to normal summon this, I have to, and I'd rather the Tinplate get Fog Bladed rather than the Gadget, because if the Gadget gets Fog Bladed, that cuts off my searching line. So from there, I use Castell to attack over his Cloak, just to put it in Grave. The Leviair got put back into his extra deck off Castell, off the failed attempt to bait the Fog Blade, and all that sort of nonsense just happened. So he ended up special summoning a Terratop out of his hand, and then specialing Takitomborg. And then, you know, being able to make an instant Leviair just right then and there was actually just really good and really crucial. He gets to make that Leviair again, bring back one of his banished Phantomites, and then special summon a Silent Boots out of his hand that he just searched off with Cloak, and then he gets to make a Dante and mill cards. So, honestly, it's actually just very, very much not in my favor at this point until he makes a small misplay. And the misplay is that he mills a Farfa off of his Dante. And he mills Farfa, and then he uses Farfa to remove my Castell, and uses that, so the Tinplate Goldfish is still on the board, and Fog Blade, most people don't remember that Fog Blade has the effect that the monster that's equipped with it cannot attack or be targeted for attacks. So unless he removes this Tinplate Goldfish from my field, he cannot attack it. So he discards a Graph, going into a Beatrice on top of his Dante, and then the Graph specials a Cowcab out of his deck, and then Cowcab goes to the grave, and he bounces my Storming Mirror Force. He makes every single play correctly. All of these plays are so correct, except that he didn't banish my Tinplate Goldfish. He banished my Castell off the Farfa. And so at this point, I think he's just reading the Fog Blade and seeing, like, trying to figure out why he can't attack. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting here like, I know what's happened. I know exactly what's happened here, but he ends up using Silent Boots to search another Fog Blade. I saw it earlier in the turn, and so at this point, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the most effective way that I can actually just play through and around this, essentially. So I try to figure it out, and I ultimately decide, you know what, I'm going to see what I can do here in terms of whether or not he's going to flip the Fog Blade immediately. Because what I've done and what I tried to do in a previous video was I would make Utopia the Lightning and then immediately try to enter my battle phase, because that gives me turn player priority, and at which point he can't Fog Blade me. And that ends up being something I end up trying to do for this video anyway, as well. But I end up top decking a double summon, and so I summon Yellow Gadget, use its effect to search Green Gadget, in which he uses Beatrice to Farfa away my Gadget so that I can't potentially make a rank 4 in his eyes, because like I could still make something like Gear Gigant, I can make Dweller, I can make a lot of these different things. Even though he does have a Fog Blade set, he would rather just not deal with that, ideally. But, so I end up overlaying into Utopia, and then putting Utopia the Lightning on top of my Utopia. And as you can see, I'm just thinking about it for a second. It's like, you know what, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to see if I can just get him, because if he doesn't activate Fog Blade before I go into battle phase, I literally just win out of principle in terms of this interaction. And I almost mess up, as you can see. I almost click the Castell to attack the Leviair, and that would forfeit my turn player priority to make the first action, and then you'd be able to Fog Blade my Utopia the Lightning. But I correct the mistake. I go mouse over Utopia the Lightning and attack his Beatrice and use its ability, and he cannot respond to the attack of Utopia the Lightning with anything. So at this point, I get to deal with his Beatrice and the Dante under it for absolutely free, and that's absolutely amazing. That's great. That's gorgeous. But at the end phase, he ends up Fog Blading my Castell so he doesn't lose the Leviair, because he's already lost enough resources as it is out of that exchange. And at the end phase, my Gadget comes back and I reset the Storming Mirror Force. So at this point, he uses his Leviair to bring back I think he brought back a Terratop, and then he normal summons another Phantom Knight to go with it, or something along those lines. And then he uses the Break Sword to pop my Utopia the Lightning, because it's bigger than anything he could put out at this point in time. At least that's what I think happened. I think that was the reason. But he ends up popping my Utopia the Lightning with his Break Sword, popping his own Fog Blade so he can potentially have more summons later in the game off of the grave effect of Fog Blade. And at that point, I get to just absolutely just ravage this man with Storming Mirror Force, because I have the Storming Mirror Force set, and Storming Mirror Force has been there for so long. It has gained so much value, potential value, because of the fact that I've been able to hold it as long as possible and activate it on my own terms. Like, it's even baited cards. Like, it's even used up cow cabs, it's used up a graph. Like, that Stormy Mirror Force had so much value behind it that flipping it there and resetting his Break Sword and Leviair was actually just really, really good, and also protecting my board. But during my next turn, I get to normal summon a gadget, go into Gear Gigant with the yellow gadget that I already have up after attacking him with 2 of them. And I can't attack with the Castel, obviously. The Castel's still just kind of stuck here. I've basically, like, made him use so many resources on the cards that actually just, like, are inherently just as good of a value base. So, like, there's that. But he ends up tributing a Kaiju over my Gear Gigant, and it kind of triggers me. So I'm like, damn it. So he overlays 2 of his Phantom Knights, one of them being Silent Boots and one being Ragged Gloves, into Break Sword. He gets the attack boost, so he's at 3k. He uses Break Sword's ability to kill the Kaiju, and then he doesn't kill my back row. He kills the Fog Blade so that he can attack my Castel, and he kills the Kaiju so that I won't have a board. And so I get to absolutely just punish him with another Stormy Mirror Force that I just top decked right after I used the first one. So he had no potential read on what it could have been, because it was literally a card that I drew, and I've been holding the Stormy Mirror Force for so long that I used the first one that, like, by the time that the second one came around, like, he just didn't play around it. It was actually really, really good for me. But so he ends up using a, I think he ends up using Fog Blade from his grave to summon this Silent Boots that's on the board. I actually just cannot remember. But he used Fog Blade, so he can't use another. Yeah, he did use Fog Blade, and he can't use another Fog Blade for the rest of the turn. And he max sees me at this point. And so I just make Dweller with Norden and Template Goldfish, so it'll get the boost after summoning a bunch of gadgets and doing an instant fusion play. And I just get to attack him for game with the Castel that he has just freed up off of his own Fog Blade, and I have the Dweller active so that, like, you know, he can't potentially do anything else that's potentially cheeky for the rest of the game on that turn. But anyway, second game, my opening is actually nowhere near as decent as it was in the previous game. It's a silver gadget, 3 revive traps, and a double summon. And one of the revive traps, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 of them that was Oasis, but Oasis is actually just strictly worse. While it does summon the card in defense position, the issue lies in that it makes the monster not a machine. It makes it a worm, so you can't make, like, Gear Gigant plays with it. And that's actually relevant. That actually comes up in, like, quite a few games. But anyway, he summons 2 Phantom Knight dudes and searches a Fog Blade off Silent Boots that he attaches off Alucard. The Alucard pops my set double summon. So honestly, I'm perfectly kind of fine with that. At this point, I'm just going to be starting to throw monsters at him, and I don't really have any defensive cards. And this is actually ideally the position I want to actually be in against this deck, because if I can continuously, like, bombard him with monsters, my defensive cards in this deck aren't necessarily that great against the matchup. So, like, monsters being more value-oriented are going to be doing the better job, ideally. But, so I normal summon my gadget, I drew a Soul Charge, so I've got, like, double Call the Haunted, Oasis, and a Soul Charge. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I end up making a Diamond Dire, and I just use its ability to just clear itself, to clear a back row, and end up hitting a Chaos Trap Hole. And I'm like, alright, this is okay, we can work with this. And so at this point, I try to figure out what I want to do, and I just ultimately decide to Soul Charge for 3, because that'll trigger the silver gadget summoning the red gadget out of my hand as well, and then both the green and yellow gadget will trigger getting searches. The red gadget will unfortunately miss timing depending on how the chain links are structured, because of the way the order that the cards hit the board. But I still get a search off red, or off of green and yellow, so I don't really care that much. The red gets summoned as chain link like 2 or 3, and it misses timing, because the gadgets do miss timing in that sort of area. But so I just immediately put 4 monsters on board, and I know he has a Fog Blade down. I know that this is true, and so at this point I've got to just bait the Fog Blade, is the idea that I'm going for. Bait the Fog Blade and then answer the Alucard and then attack him for something, and then I've got all of these revive cards that I can use on the silver gadget that'll still be engraved, which means I can keep flooding my board with monsters. I just can keep reusing the silver gadget so many times. But I try to Castel his Alucard, to which he Fog Blades, which is the result that I actually wanted. It's actually the result that I was looking to get, and I just overlay my last 2 gadgets into an Honor Arc and suck up his Alucard. So putting his cloak in the grave so that he can potentially use that later to get more searches, but he doesn't have Fog Blade engraved because the Fog Blade face up on the board, and there's nothing he can really do to revive it. He can just banish it to get a search. But So I end up utilizing Red Gadget here for some reason. I can't remember why specifically. Oh, it's because I Oasis for it back so that I can actually use both of the revive cards, because I want to actually make Dweller here. Dweller is actually just really strong at this position, and I just used two of my revive traps to bring back a Red Gadget, which got another search. So I have red, green, yellow in my hand. So I've got monster clumps of just gadgets, and then I have Call of the Haunted for Silver Gadget again. So there's potential there. So I activate Dweller in his standby phase since he has no traps in his grave, so those are the only chainable cards, so he can't even banish his cloak. And then during his end phase, I flip Call of the Haunted, bringing Silver out, and then specialing green out of my hand. I don't have any more targets left in the deck for it, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So I overlay them both into Daigusto Emerald, attaching Silver Gadget, and I put back the Diamond Dyer and the two other gadgets that were in the grave, leaving Silver Gadget. So I put back a green and a yellow. That way I can continually keep my my searching string up and stuff like that. But the Castel still cannot attack because it's still fog bladed, unfortunately. So I just use Upstart Goblin to draw, because there is no way I can kill him this turn. And I just draw another green gadget. It's like, why? Why have I done these things? Why did I not summon first? Why did I not search the other gadgets? But so I just keep having a large number of gadgets in my hand. If there was a reliable extra deck way to bounce Call of the Haunted to your hand, that would be great for this deck. In terms of a generic rank 4, but actually, if there was a way to use Beast God Vulcan in this deck, it would probably be pretty cool to bounce Call of the Haunteds and stuff, so you keep looping with Silver Gadgets and stuff like that. But otherwise, they just kind of sit here on the board and float. Maybe whatchamacallit, the magic card that you send to the grave and draw two, the continuous, you send a continuous trap and draw two. I can't remember, but anyway, at this point, I've just got this game very, very much on lockdown. I just Dweller him again in his next standby phase. He tributes my 101 for a humongous sticky string kaiju, because the Dweller's already gotten tons of value. And then I try to use my Emerald's ability again, and the freshly set card that he uses is a Solemn Strike. And it's just at this point, I have game. I have literal game on board, so at this point, I just attack him with the gadget that is left on my board, the Red Gadget, get in there for the game. So those were both games. They were both. The first one was actually pretty interesting in terms of the sort of interactions that happened, specifically because of how the DEVpro system works. How it's very unforgiving. If you don't do something right, you're gonna get punished for it. I.e., the Utopia the Lightning over Beatrice situation when he had the answer to it face down, but I just have coded turn player priority going into battle phase, and making the first move in the battle phase, and then by the time I get to make that move, the Utopia the Lightning's effect is active, saying he can't activate anything. So it's actually just really good, and actually worked out in my favor, where it honestly probably should not have been that much in my favor for this game. But other than that, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about the games and the video in the comments down below, all that sort of nonsense. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. Links are in the description of my Facebook and Twitch links if you want to check those out. If you want to suggest a deck for me to potentially play for one of these videos, send me a deck list to my Facebook fan page in a message form, and I will definitely take a look at it. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is more than sufficient to support me. It's the best way to support me, and it's the best way to motivate me to keep making content. And I would just appreciate it so much if you could take this few seconds out of your day to do that, to help show your support and help me out. If you want to continue seeing content from me, and you want to ensure that happens, then the best way is to make it to where we both benefit from it. You get to see the content that you want to see, and I get to have some sort of earnings from the work that I put into these. Because it definitely doesn't take quite as little time as people might expect it to take, but it actually takes quite a long time. But anyway, other than that, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, guys, take care.